Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar and networking event. I believe that networking is really critical when it comes to recognition of prior learning, RPL. I think of RPL as a bridge, connecting what people already know and can do with former recognition of these capabilities. But as no bridge stands alone, just as the physical bridge, it needs supporting structures. It needs connecting roads. So does RPL. It needs strong networks and relationships to function effectively. Today, we will discuss why are networks so vital in RPL and how we can connect the key players, such as RPL stakeholders like ourselves, educational institutions, and other stakeholders. I suppose when these stakeholders communicate and collaborate, the RPL process becomes more valuable for absolutely everyone. And also, I think this webinar is an excellent opportunity for networking. So in the next hour and a half, we'll explore various strategies for building and maintaining such networks. We'll examine some success stories, one from Austria, one from Ireland. And we also have time for a panel discussion with today's presenters. And as you participants, I see we have about 70 of you joining us today, and I hope more will join during the session. You don't have a chat function available for you, but you do have a Q&A option. So just right at the bottom of the screen, you'll see Q&A. You're welcome to click on there and write in any question or comment you might have. You're also welcome to upvote a good question that you'd like to get answer to. And within today's session, we'll hope to get answer to those questions and perhaps build new networks as well. I'm Marion Johnson, and I look forward to our discussion today. So I think we are good to start and we're ready to begin. So I would like to give first floor to Cecilia George, who's a senior credential evaluator at the Swedish Council for Higher Education. So Cecilia, the floor is yours, and I will let you know when there's 2 minutes left. Is that all right?
Thank you. So I'll try to share my screen and there we go. So yeah, really nice to be here to talk to you today. And as Marion said, I work at the NIC Sweden, or I work at the Swedish Council for Higher Education, but at the NIC Sweden. And I am a credential evaluator and a policy officer there. And our main task as an NIC center, it mainly concerns recognition of degrees and diplomas from formal education earned abroad. And the title of this session, it's Collaboration, European Collaboration for Recognition of Prior Learning. But I would like to broaden the scope a bit and talk about recognition in a wider sense and include all types of recognition and recognition networks and join forces with us who are working with recognition of degrees and credentials, learning outcomes, recognition of skills and competencies. So my experience is that staff who are working with recognition of foreign degrees and diplomas and other staff who work with recognition of prior learning, that we don't cooperate very much, not nationally, unfortunately, and maybe not even within the same institution. But actually, we do have much in common. We all have the same aim, and we use national qualifications framework in our work, and we use learning outcomes, etc., etc. And I think that these two recognition communities may have things to learn from each other. And I believe that you are here today that you mostly belong to the recognition and prior learning community, and so I will give an introduction to the recognition networks for credential evaluators and the conventions, which are the legal framework for recognition in higher education. And then I will also, I have a slide for that. And then I would also like to say something about recognition of prior learning in Sweden, the recognition, the RPL in practice project, and also then present the European RPL network, the organizer of this conference. And the Swedish Council for Higher Education is also a member of the European RPL network. So let's start here with some words about the ENIC-NARIC networks. And this might be familiar to some of you, but all countries which have ratified the Lisbon Recognition Convention and or are members of the European Union, they have a national information center which should facilitate access to authoritative and accurate information of the higher education system in the own country and also in other countries, and should also give advice and information on recognition matters and assessment of qualifications in accordance with the national laws and regulations. And these information centers, they are part of a recognition network, the ENIC-NARIC networks. And this network, it's supported by the European Commission and also by the Council of Europe and UNESCO. And these, they do together host the Secretariat for the Lisbon Recognition Convention. And the ENICs and the NARICs are actually two separate networks. And as I said, countries which are parties to the Lisbon Recognition Convention, they have an ENIC, and the ENICs, they form the ENIC network. And then we have the NARIC network, which is between information centers in the European Union countries, and also including non-European Union countries which are eligible for the Erasmus Plus program. For instance, Norway and Ukraine. And the NARIC network, it has a separate annual meeting, but most activities are happening in the joint ENIC-NARIC networks. There's a joint annual meeting, which is the main activity every year, when elections of the network boards take place. The boards work together with a common work plan. And the common purpose also for the ENIC-NARIC networks is to support national information centers in their task to develop recognition practices and to inform national stakeholders, which are mainly the higher education institutions, about the best practices in recognition. And much work to support the centers on the implementation and with policy development. Much of this work is done via international projects. And these projects, it bring together staff from different countries in the network. So if you visit the ENIC-NARIC webpage, which you see here, the address on the slide, you will find information on concluded international projects on different themes, like recognition of micro-credentials and also recognition of refugees qualifications, even if in cases where not formal documentation is available. So much of the ENIC-NARIC network's activities have financial support through the Erasmus Plus program and also through the Council of Europe. And this is, of course, a great advantage for the sustainability of the networks and to be able to do these activities, of course. So I'm going to move forward here, I hope. Yes. The basis for the ENIC-NARIC networks is the Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications Concerning Higher Education in the European region. It's called the Lisbon Recognition Convention, or the LRC for short. And this convention, it has as its purpose to promote academic recognition with clear recognition procedures and uniform and transparent criteria. And the convention has been ratified by 57 countries. The convention's objective is that the foreign qualification should be recognized unless there is a substantial difference between the national qualification and the foreign qualification. And the difference, it should be substantial in relation to the purpose in which recognition is sought. And all of this is, in my point of view, very applicable also in recognition of prior learning, these objectives. And the Lisbon Recognition Convention, it's not that young anymore, it's over 25 years old, and that's probably a reason why RPL and flexible learning paths are not mentioned in the LRC. And the recognition of migrants' qualifications has been mentioned by other speakers during this conference as a topic of great importance for the future, and it is, and also that recognition of prior learning has an important role in this. So I just wanted to touch upon this subject and say that quite a lot of effort has been made to implement this Article 7 in the Lisbon Recognition Convention. And this article and the recommendation, which you see here on the slide from 2017, suggests a methodology for recognition of refugees or displaced persons' qualifications, even if not all documents can be presented. And the methodology in the LRC has been supplemented by an interview-based recognition scheme. And the Norwegian NARIC has promoted it through a number of projects, and it has also been picked up by the Council of Europe, and it's referred to as the European Qualifications Passport for Refugees. And I think that many of you have heard about this. It's also called the EQPR in short. It's a standardized document that explains the qualifications a refugee is likely to have based on the available evidence when a degree certificate or the transcripts might be missing. And the evaluation methodology, it's a combination of an assessment of available documentation and the use of a structured interview. So this resembles maybe a bit the documentation part of, or the mapping part in an RPL procedure. So credential evaluators in the now more than 20 countries, which are partners to the EQPR project, they form like a pool of evaluators. It's not a formal network, but indeed it's a network-like collaboration, which is coordinated by the Council of Europe. And you can read further about this in these links. Okay, so if we look a bit how recognition looks like in the world, UNESCO has put much effort during the past decade in updating the recognition conventions in the different regions. And conventions, they constitute the legal framework for recognition. And there are new updated regional conventions for the Asia-Pacific region, for the African region, and also for the Latin America and Pacific region. And the Arab states, they also have an updated recognition convention, which was adopted 2022, but it still needs more ratifications before it can enter into force. And as for the implementation of these conventions, so networks is the way forward. And since recognition is built on trust and information sharing, all of these regional conventions have formed to plan or have already, they have formed or they plan to form networks of information centers similar to the ENIC-NARIC networks to support the implementation of these conventions. I would also like to mention the UNESCO Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications Concerning Higher Education. It entered into force last year, and now 33 states have ratified it, and this is a growing number. And the Global Convention, it will tie together the regional conventions, and it will facilitate mobility and recognition of all types of learning. So much content overlap from the regional conventions. For instance, that the qualifications should be recognized in a transparent and in a fair manner, etc. But this global convention text, it also has parts and definitions on informal and non-formal learning, and also for prior recognition of prior learning. And there's a lot of text on this slide, but you can see here the Article 6 on the convention. It's explicitly about recognition of partial studies and of prior learning. And it says that each party may recognize documented or certified partial studies or documented or certified prior learning acquired in another state party unless substantial differences can be shown. And also that alternatively, it should be sufficient for a state party to enable an individual who has undertaken documented or certified prior learning in another state party to obtain an assessment of these partial studies or this prior learning upon the request of the individual concerned. And I'm sure, or I know, that discussion on the interpretation will be ongoing in many countries, and it is ongoing. But I would say that this makes it possible to say that recognition of prior learning is a legal right in state parties. And this is quite important to know, I think. So a slight change of subject, but still, the Swedish Council for Higher Education, where I work, it has performed various tasks in connection to recognition of prior learning over the years. And 2019, the Swedish Council took the initiative to coordinate a project. It was called Recognition of Prior Learning in Practice, and it was funded through Erasmus Plus to support implementation of Bologna reforms. And RPL in practice, it wanted to address the gap between policy and practice, which is so often referred to in the discussions on implementation of RPL. So together with partners from Austria, Croatia, Iceland, Ireland, and Sweden, as well as Eurasia, we used a structured method for peer learning on practical work in higher education institutions, which were connected to the project. And you can see all the logotypes from all partners here on this slide. And the website is still open if you're interested to take part of the published resources. But a few more words about the RPL in Practice project. And if I should mention some takeaways, it was the generous and trustful sharing of methods and insights in the development and implementation of national and institutional practices. And the main conclusion from the project was really that peer learning works. We had a great mix of actors in the project, those with much experience and less experience, and also partners both from the policy level and the practice level. We had higher education institutions, ministries, QA agencies, ENIC-NARICs, and other national and European agencies and organizations in the project. And also, as we have heard in presentations during this conference, the general conclusions from the RPL in Practice project are still valid regarding the crucial points for implementation of quality assured and consistent processes for RPL. There has to be institutional commitment to the task. And also, it would be nice with an RPL-friendly culture. There has to be transparent procedures, agreed standards and definitions, and a learning outcomes-oriented curricula, which is related to a national qualifications framework, etc. And we have touched upon much of this during previous sessions last week and yesterday. But last but not least, one important point for implementation, it was the need for network and information sharing. And we are really happy that this need was taken care of by AQ Austria, who have quite successfully, I must say, coordinated the European RPL network project. And I will get back to the European RPL network within short. But first, I just want to say something short about RPL in Sweden. So all national partners in the RPL in Practice project had, as I said, appointed higher education institutions who worked with RPL and validation, and they reported back to the project for peer learning. And the Swedish partners in the projects were the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm and Göteborg University in Göteborg. And the two universities, they represent 2 of 4 regional RPL networks in Sweden. And these networks, they have been active since 2015 or 16. And all Swedish higher education institutions which work, at least to some extent, with validation, as we call it in Sweden, they are organized in a regional RPL network or validation network. And 2 representatives per region are then members in a national RPL network. And both the regional and the national networks, they are sustainable due to a common need for networking and dialogue. There's unfortunately no financial support available. There's still much to be done before we can say that RPL is thoroughly implemented in Swedish higher education, but a lot has happened during the last 10 years. And one important development is that the Swedish Council for Higher Education, where I work, we have become a formal task from the government to support recognition of prior learning and validation in higher education. And this means that we have been able to confirm that we will step up and coordinate the national RPL network. And we will organize a first meeting with participants from all higher education institutions, which are part of one of the regional networks in December, and we hope for a fruitful future cooperation. And then, of course, the Swedish national network is represented at the European level via the European RPL network. So this brings me to the finale of my presentation. As Agnes Vitsani said at the opening of this conference last week, the European RPL network has had as its foundation, it was founded as a work package within the Erasmus Plus project 3 in AT+, and it's coordinated by AQ Austria. And it was a follow-up, as I said, to the RPL in Practice, to this project's conclusion that there is a need for continued cooperation, for peer learning and networking within the field of RPL to continue the implementation of practices. And all permanent members of the networks are organized in committees for more long-term work and in working groups for thematic cooperation. And one example is the Peer Learning Committee. And if I may, I will just explain how the Peer Learning Committee works. The committee members have prepared and sent out a survey to national networks, and individual staff at member higher education institutions in national networks have then submitted their interest to take part in peer learning, and this then forms a pool of possible partners for peer learning. And we know that this works, so we have seen exchanges taking place, both online but also physical meetings, and we know that higher education institution staff have been successful in applying for financial support through the Erasmus Plus for these types of activities. And the European network, it was formally founded 1 year ago at the project meeting at the AQ Austria. And today we have 9 national RPL networks and 5 European institutions in the network, as well as individual experts. And we hope, of course, that the network will continue to grow and be sustainable now that it will stand on its own feet after the project was concluded. And the objective of the network is to enhance the use of RPL in higher education and to exchange experience of the implementation of RPL. And we hope that the European level also can give support to the national networks with input of information from European organizations and the policy discussions in Europe. So that's it for me. So I will give the word back to Marion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you very much. I'd like to remind everybody that we have the Q&A available, so please avail of that opportunity, ask questions, comments, and we will try to address those. Cecilia, before we move on to, we have two examples of networks, but before we move on to that, you mentioned the Swedish networks, and I was really excited to hear that you have regional networks and you do have a national network forming, and the Swedish National the Council will be responsible for it, which is wonderful. But you also mentioned that the need for networking is important. So what is the need, the driving force for the Swedish national network of RPL? What brings it together?
I would say that many staff who are working with RPL or with validation, they often sit quite alone at their department or in their institution. And networks like this might be the only external contacts which you have, where the people you meet actually understand what you are talking about or what you have as your daily work. And as such, this is really an important thing then, to have a network to feel the support from others in what you do, and to exchange ideas and ways of working. Yeah. And I see you nod, all of you here. So yeah, maybe you
I would
absolutely
agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cecilia. We'll have more time to discuss a little bit later, but I would like to give floor to Veronica Lanzenberger. I hope I pronounced that right. I practiced before.
Perfectly.
Veronica is from the University of Innsbruck in Austria. And Veronica, you will share your example and experience from how you've built an institutional network. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very
Happy to hear.
much. Thank you, Maren. So I will share my screen. So I hope you can see it in the right. Great. So yeah, thank you very much. Well, in the next 12 minutes, I'm going to present you the institutional implementation of RPL, how it's done at the moment at our institution, the University of Innsbruck, also the national legal framework, the amendment which prompted and also in a way facilitated RPL. And in the second half, I'm going to talk about my study visit last May at the University College Cork, which still lingers in a way, and in some aspects still influences my daily work. So the legal basis for all recognition can be found in the Universities Act, especially in the paragraph 78. Here's just a short excerpt concerning the formal academic achievements. So the Universities Act is actually the central body of legislation that regulates the Austrian law on higher education. And in 2021, there was an amendment to the law that brought also changes with regard to recognition, also with the clear aim to prompt and facilitate lifelong learning. In particular, the following points are in this regard meaningful. There was first the reversal of the burden of proof. So now universities have to prove that achievements acquired elsewhere cannot be recognized because there are significant differences, Cecilia mentioned it before, to the courses and examinations as they are prescribed in the formal context in the curricula. Also, the focus here is now on the achieved learning outcomes and not as previously on academic achievements. It also brought clear regulations for the recognition of prior qualifications at higher vocational schools, as well as from vocational and non-vocational contexts following a recognition procedure up to 60 credits each. So as a result of this amendment, formal achievements that are positively assessed exams or other academic achievements can be recognized to an unlimited extent of credits, whereas qualifications from secondary schools like higher schools or higher vocational schools up to 60 ECTS credits if those achievements do not differ significantly from the courses anchored in the curricula. So I'm sorry, I think I skipped. Sorry, I think I missed the. So for to the non-formal achievement, it's also regulated now that qualifications from outside the higher educational contexts, non-formal achievements, professional and non-professional qualifications, like vocational trainings, courses offered by NGOs can be recognized if there is a corresponding procedure provided by the institution. And I will show you in the next slide how we have implemented this procedure so far. And also these qualifications can be recognized up to 60 credits. But it should be noted that the formal achievements from secondary schools and vocational secondary schools plus the non-formal achievements together can only be recognized up to 90 ECTS credits in total. So here in Austria, 60 plus 60 equals 90. Now an overview of the validation procedure, how it's implemented so far at our University of Innsbruck. So for more than a year now, since October 23, we have the part of the stage on validation that regulates the procedure by which at the moment non-formal learning outcomes from vocational and non-vocational contexts can be recognized. So and also up to a maximum of 60 credits. This part of the stage specifies on the basis of which criteria learning outcomes are compared with the formal, the curricular learning outcomes criteria like quality, qualification level, workload, and also the aspect if the progression of the students is not jeopardized in case the non-formal learning outcome is recognized. Sorry. Here is an overview of this procedure works. The students prepare the applications where they compare the learning outcomes and the non-formal ones with the formal ones in the curricula, and then attach their certificates and their proofs of them and send them then to the examination office for a formal examination. If everything is formally in order, the applications are forwarded to the Deans of Studies for a subject-related examination. And then the Deans of Study make the decision on recognition based on the criteria I mentioned before. And then the students receive the notification within 2 months. And in case of positive recognition, students will be credited with the corresponding credits. At the moment, yeah, as I mentioned, it's only possible to validate non-formal learning outcomes, but we plan to extend this as well. I mean, it's, as Cecilia mentioned, in regard to the recognition of refugees, qualifications, and so on, it's rather limited. But yeah, we're on it and hope to go to the informal learning outcomes as a next step. And so far, we receive approximately 2 applications per week, mostly in the field of sports, the sports science degree programs, both levels, master and bachelor, also in studies where a course of paramedic emergency first aid certificate is required. These are the most common applications so far, and also the ones that are recognized almost routinely. So now I want to talk about my study visit in May. I took together with my colleague from the Archie Austria, Agnes Witzany. She also organized it, and to the University College Cork. Of course, this is especially interesting of the long tradition RPL has there and in Ireland per se. And we had the chance to visit the Adult Continuing Education Center, where Lindsay and her colleagues, Kira and also Belinda, gave us insight in her work on RPL. We came there with a lot of prepared questions. So, like how to create an RPL-friendly culture, how to overcome resistances within the institution, how to enhance commitment, which Cecilia mentioned is critical to go on in institutions with RPL. Also concerning of whether or not training for staff might be helpful, the role of statistics, the importance of creating data for visibility, but in the case of Lindsay mentioned, it's also basically to get funding at Cork, not at our institution. Yeah, my questions were all answered. Also, I want to mention the following strategies, which I found really helpful and beneficial for my work. Also mentioned beforehand, of course, the creating trust and creating a trust-based culture. And I found it very beneficial, the strategy to find allies on all institutional level. And Lindsay mentioned she approached them all one by one and talked to them. And so in a way, get them aboard. So when they talked about RPL, they are already committed, which is crucial to get things through. Also, of course, the importance of transparency and consistency, which we are trying to build at the moment, also with as electronic single digital gateway way to get it all done electronically. So at every point at the process, it's visible for all stakeholders where the application is right now and so on. But most of all, I think it's, well, maybe not underestimated, but I think the most powerful aspects that such networks and such exchanges can provide is the moral support. Cecilia also mentioned it. The fact that it can be such a relief just to simply hear that it's everywhere the same, everyone faces the same or at least similar problems and resistances. And also a really helpful approach just to tackle it steps, well, one step at a time, in a very pragmatic and stoic way. And this helped me a lot when Lindsay mentioned it all the time. I think she used the metaphor of the elephant. How do you lift an elephant bite by bite, or eat an elephant bite by bite? So, and I think that's a really helpful approach how to do RPL. So besides from broaden your own perspective and see how it's done at other institutions, I think, yeah, it also really helps to refocus on what it's all about and not to lose sight of the bigger picture that RPL is about. So that's so far from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Veronica. It is very true that we are trying to eat the elephant bite by bite, loads of bites to be taken. But there is one very specific question to you about the student RPL applications. Do you have a time frame set for when they can apply for RPL, or they can submit their applications whenever they're ready with it? Is it on running basis, or there's a time frame set for the students?
Yeah, well, actually, it is time-wise, it's recommended to do it at the beginning of your studies, and they have to be inscribed, of course. But there was once a limit how they have to apply for their RPL for the end of the second semester, but this has fallen now, so they can do it more or less all the time. But we have also started now at the beginning of the semester very many information offers in the various programs when they started with their studies, so to counsel them on RPL or to make it visible or to make let them know that there is the possibility of get their prior learning recognized via validation. And yeah, so and we hope little by little it will spread the information and will be public then to all students.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, first of all, thank you for the question that was submitted in Q&A. There's one question that will be answered a bit later on, but again, I will remind you to please post your questions at the Q&A. I know this might become already annoying, but I will keep on saying that. So you better post your questions. But I'm very, very happy to continue on to Ireland. It was mentioned by Veronica already that she had been in Ireland for a study visit. And I'm happy to give the floor to Karina Curley and Siobhan McGee, who are both co-conveners of the Irish RPL Practitioner Network. So the ladies, the floor is yours. We are happy to hear how we're doing things in Ireland.
Thanks very much, Maren. My name is Siobhan McGee. I'm actually going to go first. I'm one of the co-conveners of the RPL Practitioner Network, and I'm here this morning, as you heard, with Karina Curley, my co-convener on the network. So just to take you through some history, if you like, or an introduction to the RPL Practitioner Network. Ireland, we are a national cross-sectoral and cross-institution network, and that's what makes us quite unique. I think on a European basis and internationally, we are cross-sectoral. So we are from further education, higher education, from civic society, and from the wider education and training community. The network was proposed to Quality and Qualifications Ireland, QQI, our national certification body, in 2014, following practitioner engagement with a similar EU network that was in place at the time. And following these proposals and discussions, the network was formally established in 2015. We have founding members who are still part of the network and part of the steering group, and I'll be mentioning one or two of those. The idea of the network and the principle of the network is to support providers and stimulate practice in line with meeting the obligations of the 2012 recommendation. So that's why the network actually came into being. And there was a formal launch of the network in 2015, so next year is the 10th anniversary. And the formal launch included CDFOP and Commission representatives presenting work on the country report for Ireland, and Cork Institute of Technology, which is now MTU, presented a report on RPL in higher education, and then a national report. And then in keeping with the ethos of the network, there was a proposal for a similar report for further education, which QQI agreed to sponsor, and this report actually was developed. So the RPL Practitioner Network is voluntary and inclusive. We're all volunteers. We all have other jobs, and we're volunteers on the network. And it's inclusive. It includes all sectors, all partners across the sectors. We have a national membership. We're quite lucky in Ireland. We're small, so it's possible to have a national membership. Most people know each other. We meet each other at events. And as I said, we include further education, higher education, civic society, and the wider educational community. And just here on the slide, I have some of the logos now these are actually the steering group logos, but they're representative of the membership of the network. So we have the ETBs, the Education and Training Boards, which are vocational education, or further education as we call it. We have TEA, the Technological Higher Education Association. We have the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland. We have Volunteer Ireland, and we have a steering group member from there. We have the Agriculture and Food Development Authority, Teagasc. We have the National Organisation for the Unemployed. We have the Irish University Association. Griffith College there is a private university. We have AINTAS, which is the Adult Learning Association. We have ETBI, the representative body for vocational education. And I just want to highlight here, we have QQI, Quality and Qualifications Ireland. They are our anchor, if you like. They were responsible for the founding of the network, and they sponsor the network. They sponsor our events. And we have Andrina Wafer, who many of you probably know, sitting on our steering committee as a representative of QQI. So one of our former co-conveners talked about the network, Angela Higgins, and I have her name there. She talked about our network as a shared enterprise, social in its essence, and inclusive and welcoming of all stakeholders without exception. And yes, our stakeholders and members come from rural and urban backgrounds. So we have big organizations, small organizations, academic, universities, vocational training workshops, from the volunteer sector and non-governmental organizations. This is the steering group of the RPL Practitioner Network. We have a revised steering group founded in 2023 following COVID. We have 21 members across the sectors, and we have 2 co-conveners across the sectors as well. I'm from further education, and Karina, who's going to speak after me, is from higher education. We have terms of reference which govern our activities. The terms of reference were developed by the network, by the steering group, and then consulted upon through our website. And these are our key principles. We have values of inclusivity, professionalism, we have effective communication, we promote learning and sharing, and we actually had an event last week that Karina will mention. We're objective, we don't come with any agenda, it's all about the promotion of RPL. We provide stability, there is a core group there, a core steering group, and we have shared ownership. There's no one partner that has, a vested interest or more power than another. It is very much a shared level platform of consultation and conversation. Again, our terms of reference talk about being representative of the diversity of education, training and other RPL interests. And our members were nominated by representative bodies as individuals and individual practitioner members. We support the dissemination and wider engagement of RPL cross-sectorally. We are very active on social media and we have a website, and Karina will mention that. The co-conveners are drawn from the steering group biannually, and we meet at least 4 times per year. And we have a regular membership. Now, we've actually been meeting more than 4 times per year recently. We meet online and in person, and we have a quorum of half the regular membership. One of our main strengths, I think, is that we have a meeting of policy and practice. And again, Angela Higgins, I'm quoting Angela again, talks about a rich interface of policy, practice and partnerships fed by innovative thinking and openness. So we have our policymakers, we have our thinkers, if you like, there, and we have Andrina from QQI involved in developing policy, and we also have our practitioners, and this is an interface or an opportunity for policymakers to communicate with practitioners, and I think that mutual agenda is very beneficial. Okay, I'm going to hand over to you now, Karina.
Thank you, Siobhan. As Siobhan said, I'm Karina and I represent the higher education sector. Siobhan, are you moving on the slides for me there? We have our practitioner network, and as Siobhan said, it was founded in 2015. But in 2020, they decided to review the terms of reference to reflect the evolving RPL context. So following that review, it was agreed to extend the steering group to 21 members. And these new members would include representation from further higher and community education and training settings, voluntary sector, employers, civil society, regulatory and professional organisations, and national bodies. So there was intensive recruitment to expand to 21 members. And this newly expanded steering group met for the first time in person in June 2023. The revised terms of reference were presented and they were adopted by the new members. It was agreed at that meeting that 2 co-conveners would be elected and that they would run for a 2-year term and would be representative of the network. And it was agreed that the network would meet, the steering meeting group would meet at least 4 times a year. Now, it would not be possible to conduct our work in 21 members at each meeting, so it was decided to break up the work of the network into 4 different working groups. So the 4 working groups are communications, terms and trends of RPL nationally and internationally, case studies and communities of practice, mentoring. So at each meeting, we do the work, we allocate time to the working groups, and the working groups report back on their work if they have met in between steering group meetings. So this is a very important part of the work because this is where a lot of the meat of the network is done, in these smaller groups. Thanks, Siobhan. So as a steering group, as we've agreed to meet 4 times a year, but if we are organising an in-person or an online event, then we do have to meet more frequently. So we could have monthly meetings like we've had for the last few months, because as Siobhan said, we had a big in-person event last week. And those in-person events on average have about 80 to 100 participants. So last week we had 80 different practitioners from around the country attending the in-person event. And for our second semester now, we will have an online event, and that's for the wider membership. So we try to hold 2 events per year for wider membership, as I said, 1 in person and 1 online. The events are organised by the practitioner network members, but it's very important to note that they are funded by QQI, because that's kind of critical to our network, because without that funding, it would not be possible for us to host those meetings. So for example, last week we were able to have our in-person event in a nice hotel, and we were able to provide lunch for all members. During COVID, we're happy to say that the net continued. Thanks again to the membership. There was these energizing events were organized, including a series of Friday afternoon workshops. So I wasn't involved at that time, but well done to all the members who kept it going and alive during lockdown. Now, it's very important for the network that we are able to communicate with the wider membership. And we do this through the website. And again, it's great to have the website, and that is, I said, as our way to communicate with the wider membership. However, having a website also brings challenges because somebody has to host that website and somebody else has to edit the website. So we're very lucky in that that we have QQI to host the website, and they pay for the funding around the hosting of the website. We also have volunteers, 2 members, who agreed to edit the website, and they keep it updated with photographs and events. So that's a benefit to us. But again, we are depending on other people giving their time to do that work for us. And we also have a LinkedIn page. And again, we're very lucky that we have a member who is active on social media and very much enjoys it. And she manages the LinkedIn page for us. And this is vital for us to promote events and to get the word out there that we are organizing things and to keep the wider membership updated. We have very good external cooperation with stakeholders. So nationally, we are linking with relevant networks, for example, the further education and training sector and the higher education network. And these are important because we can get information about events out very quickly through existing networks. We also have strong links with European and international links, including we've had talks from the EU Commission, CDFOP, OECD, and a variety of other countries. And this is very important for us to keep updated with what's happening on a wider European network. So examples of our collaborative work would be inviting guest speakers to speak, or also members of the network going to conferences and events to speak as well. We had members on the organizing committee for the 5th Biennale, which took place earlier in the year. And we also had members of the network presenting at the Biennale. And we also contribute towards papers and research that are called for. So that brings us to the end of our RPL Practitioner Network presentation. Thank you for listening. We have our QR code there on our website, which would bring you to our LinkedIn page. So thank you, and we're pleased now to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Siobhan and Karina. We did lost your video, Karina, but we know you're still there. And apologies, there's been some comments about the quality of the audio. I hope that you still bear with us. Karina and Siobhan, what really strikes me is the diverse membership of this network. How do you get these people involved? How do you bring them together?
Sorry, Maren, before she answers that, can you just check, because it says the host has disabled my video.
Oh, it might have been to do with the audio quality. So no, don't worry. We'll get you back there.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and answer just while we're looking at Karina's video. So you talked about, I think, the inclusiveness really of the network. Is that it, Maren? You're looking at how we are so inclusive. Yeah, we're really, really lucky, I suppose. Welcome back, Karina. We're really, really lucky in that Ireland is quite small, you know, so it's not that hard to bring everyone together. And the RPL circle as well, we're long-standing. Most people know each other in some way. I think the ethos behind any network really, and I'm going to refer back to one of my slides there, because you know, in our terms of reference, we actually have the key principles of the network, but it's almost like a toolkit, I think, for networks. We talk about behaving professionally. It is a professional network. It's worth joining. You know, we work hard together, we cooperate and we share together. There's added value in being part of the network. We communicate very effectively, and Karina went through that. She went through our communications methodologies. We do promote learning and sharing and collaboration, and our event last week showed that. We're all objective. We don't have an agenda going in there. It's just really about RPL. We're a stable network. We're there for 10 years. We have QQI behind us. We also have the IUA and TEA as members, and ETBI, the representative bodies for vets. So we have national organizations as part of our network, and I think that gives us a real coherence there and a real anchor. And we have shared ownership. No one has greater power than another person. I think you'll agree, Karina. No one has a greater stake than any other member, and I think that's really important as well, the equality part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will pop questions on the screen because we have time for discussion. And again, everybody who's watching us, you're very welcome to share your questions in the Q&A, as well as examples of your own networks, wherever or whichever part of Europe you might be at this stage. So I will share the questions for our discussion. Here we go. I think we can start with our panel discussion. I think, Siobhan, you almost fed into that question already. So what are the conditions that contribute to a successful network? Because we can certainly say that the network in Ireland is a very successful one. It's functioning, it's meeting regularly, and like you said, it's established network for a good 10 years already. So, but what are the key challenges and opportunities in growing and sustaining a network? So I would first give floor to Siobhan and Karina to say what it is in Ireland, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities? And then Cecilia and Veronica, you're very, very welcome to feed in as well.
Do you want to come in, Karina, or will I?
Well, I think just picking up, because you've said a lot of it already,
Yeah.
Siobhan, but I think the network depends on volunteers, and it depends on people giving up their time and being willing to share information and share their experience and learning. And I think that's invaluable to us. Nobody has networking as part of their job description. Everybody is doing this over and above their existing workload. So anything that happens, anything that's organized, any role that people take on, they're doing it as volunteers over and above their existing work. And I think that's very important to recognize that. But I think it would not be successful if members were not getting something out of it. So I think the shared information, the opportunity to learn. So last week we had 80 people in a room across all sectors. It's invaluable for those people to sit around the table and talk to each other and hear about each other's problems, what's happening in different sectors, where everybody's at, what are the challenges, how can we help each other? So I think everybody gets something out of it. So I don't think it would work unless we had that shared learning and those shared opportunities for information sharing. But also, I think the funding is critical. And we are really lucky to have QQI, and especially Andrina there, really promoting it and supporting us. And everybody loves a free lunch at the end of the day. So it's really nice to go to a nice place, have lunch, meet, talk. And I think they're the two things that would stand out for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that you shared the free lunch as well. It is important. My own background, I'm actually Estonian, but my new adopted homeland is Ireland. But I'd say in Estonia, we also tried to launch a practitioners network, well, around the same time as in Ireland, maybe a little bit before, but we couldn't get it running. And I think what you're mentioning there are two really important aspects. One is funding, that there is some funds that go into it that help to pay for those lunches. But also what you mentioned is the people, and the people giving up their own time. Surely we receive something back, but that we are willing to put this time and effort into this. And I think back in the days in Estonia, we ran out of steam, so we couldn't keep it going. Whereas today, the Ministry of Education in Estonia is funding and trying to bring and revive the networks as well. So the past 2 days, I was with the RPL practitioners here in Estonia, and I heard the same thing, the relief of coming together and sharing and knowing I'm not alone. It's so vital. And I think Cecilia and Veronica, you mentioned something very, very similar. Is there something you'd like to add to the challenges and how we can keep those networks going? Cecilia?
Well, I could then speak, then it's not my own experience here, since we're just taking up this task to coordinate the Swedish national network, but my European RPL network colleague, Pernilla, who represents Göteborg University, she's very much involved in the Swedish national network and also in the regional network of West Sweden. On her behalf, I can say that and copy what you already have said, that the members of a network must feel that they benefit, of course, from the meetings. You leave the meetings happier than when you came, so to speak. And the Swedish networks actually have been alive since almost 10 years without funding. And that's mainly because of this, that the networks give so much, and that you have the possibility to collaborate with others. So it's such an important thing, the networking and the colleagues that you get through this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Veronica, would you like to add to this?
Well, I can only agree with all that was said, and I think we're really lucky to have the ECU Austria because they organize meetings from the RPL Network Austria on a regular basis, and I think that's good to have.
Lovely, thank you very much. We can certainly learn various lessons from the existing networks that we have, the ones who have really succeeded, the ones who haven't probably not succeeded so well. But I guess the question here is about the sustainability of those networks, how we can drive the expansion and the sustainability of those networks. What can we do to keep those networks flourishing? Who would like to take this? Cecilia?
Well, as I tried to describe the networks in formal recognition, I think we could maybe, I mean, it's difficult to just go and ask the European Union for support, but I mean, recognition of prior learning will be a growing task. And we have had the year of skills on the European agenda. And I think we really need to try to apply for more financial support to have the European collaboration going, to also to have, we have the established RPL network at the European level, but also to have maybe appointed project activities, etc., to build further on this already established network that we have. So it's quite a big task to run a European project, but we hope that it will be possible to do things like this in the future, since, I mean, with the parallels in recognition networks with European projects, it's so beneficial to bring people together, to push the development of practices and policy work forward. So I really cross my fingers for that to happen in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And I suppose the challenge as well is, one thing is that we have national networks in place, but to come together within Europe, it's another level of a challenge there, I presume, and to keep those networks running as well. Karina, I'll give floor to you.
Yeah, no, one of the challenges as well that I would mention is getting the voice of the learner involved, because while we've mentioned a lot of formal organizations, they are all employees of an organization, and thus they can travel and get expenses for traveling of that. But I'm sure it's the same in every other country as it is in Ireland. It's very difficult to pay somebody who is not an employee. So to ask a learner to travel, to attend event, it's really difficult. Yes, we want to have the voice of the learner at those events. So I see that as a challenging way of getting around how we can actively engage learners and not take that for granted, that we can reimburse their expenses and fund them for taking part.
Absolutely, Karina, I think this is a wonderful point, because when we are talking about RPL networks, we are talking about often practitioners, stakeholders, we are talking about RPL assessors, counselors, mentors, however else we might call them, and employers as well. But the RPL process itself is all about learners, and those learners often might not be part of those networks. It's a very, very good question, is how can we engage better with the learners who this process is really for and about them. And Cecilia, in Sweden, do you have learners represented in the regional or national networks? Do you hear their voice?
Yeah, I'm probably not the right one to respond to that question yet. Might be in a year, but Pernilla, I know you're here in the audience, so if you would write perhaps in the chat in what sense you engage learners in the networks. I think I know that the networks are primarily for practitioners at higher education institutions. But please, Pernilla, if you would like to write in the chat or in the Q&A.
Perfect. Veronica, in your institution, how do you communicate with the learners? Do you listen to their voice? Do you meet up with them? What do you do?
Well, actually, I tried to. I was sitting in a room, a welcoming room for students, where I wanted to counsel them on RPL, but no one did show up. I thought maybe it was a sunny day, so they had businesses elsewhere. But yeah, that's what we do, and we also informed the community of the Hochschulgemeinde in English. So where the students are united in a sort of organization, higher educational institutions, about RPL in the, sorry?
Student union, perhaps?
Right, that's it. Thank you. So yeah, and I mean, we see the applications and we see that there really is a need to expand to the informal learning outcomes, because we get a lot of questions whether or not this is possible right now. So yeah, in a way, we do, can say that.
Very good, thank you. And I think this is probably one of the challenges for any RPL network, is to think about how can we involve learners in it? How can we make their voice heard within those networks, so that while we work away, that we don't forget who we are actually working for? I would move on to the next question about the future. And I know it's hard to predict the future. It's hard to even know what's happening tomorrow. But regardless of that, let's try. And what does the future look like for the RPL networks? And we have various levels of networks. We have networks within institutions, we have networks within countries and national level, and then we have also, of course, the European level network, and we obviously want to know what the future holds. But before we move on to the European level, let's look at the institutional level. What does the future look like? Veronica, you have you have an institutional network. You work together within your institution in Innsbruck University. What is that you hope for the future? How do you want to continue this work together in a network?
Well, actually, we're planning to expand and take more people aboard. I'm not sure whether we will do this in an explicit network, but only continuing in collaboration. Yeah, but that's probably our approach there. And yeah, so hopefully a fruitful future at our institutional level.
Yes, that's very good to hear. I wonder, from the institutional level, are you looking to also step into the national level in Austria and come together as a national network?
You mean with all the stakeholders now on the institutional levels to transfer them to the national level, or?
I wonder if, as an institution, you will also form a national RPL network, or will you be part of a national network as well in Austria?
Yeah, well, I am part of the national network now, or didn't I get
And
that?
what's the future holding for the national network in Austria? What you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, maybe more experiences with where we are trying to tackle the informal learning outcomes as a next step. So more exchanging how it is done and how to overcome all the bespoken resistances and yeah, but actually I'm not sure whether a national network can help. I think there are specific institutional things that make it difficult or not, but yeah, but hopefully yeah, to have to see what it's like on the other institutions could be helpful.
Very good. Well, best of luck with this. Siobhan and Karina, what's the future looking like for a RPL national network in Ireland?
Will I take this first, Karina? Just to say, we have our RPL practitioner network, which is cross-sectoral, and then we have the network that Karina is part of, the higher education network. But a new RPL in FET network is about to be launched in Ireland. It has been developed by ETBI, the Education and Training Boards Ireland, the representative body for FET, and we would see these sectoral networks as being complementary to the cross-sectoral voluntary network that is the RPL practitioner network. I don't know if you want to add to that, Karina.
Yeah, and I think we can keep it active by continuing to review what we're doing. And I think we have a work plan now that went from 2020 to 2024 with those 4 working groups I mentioned earlier. And they're coming to the end of their time now. So we will, in early 2025, take time as a network to review the work of those working groups and see if we need to change them, to look at what's happening and where we need to be focusing our energy. So I think there's an onus on us as a network to keep it alive and to keep it interesting. and for that we are totally dependent on the members volunteering, and as I'm sure they will.
Very interesting that a network leads to new networks being born, as you said, that from the cross-sectoral to a sectoral network. So there will be more RPL networks, which is absolutely wonderful to hear. Also, I see in our Q&A that there are 2 new national RPL networks that Marek has mentioned about, one in Ukraine and one in Poland. So good luck with those, and I hope that today's session is also giving you ideas how to get those networks up from the ground and up and running. But Cecilia, over to you. In European level, what does the future hold for the European RPL network?
So as I said before, I hope that the European level will get continued support, and that the network will thrive and grow. And we welcome, of course, for the European RPL network, new members to join if there are new RPL national networks being formed. They are more than welcome to contact us, of course, in the European RPL network, and we can discuss membership in the network. But still, it's really important for the European level to see that the network should be operations driven, and there should be a need continuously. So the members and partners must feel this, that they benefit from the network. So it's the same at all levels of networks, obviously. But I think that the lifelong learning in focus, it really makes RPL an important topic for the future. And I also hope for the different recognition communities to have an increased collaboration in the future. And we see the topic of recognition of micro-credentials as one of those thematics where we can join forces and exchange methodologies and ideas on recognition of smaller parts of credentials, smaller credentials, which, yeah, so we hope for a lot of things to happen in the future, and yeah, will be interesting to follow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think looking at the time, we do need to wrap up. And I think what you said at the very end here about the hope, and I hear that from all of you, that there is hope for those networks that have already been established, and there's hope for those networks which haven't yet been established, but we're already thinking about building those networks. And as we started today, I mentioned networks as being bridges, and to build those bridges between the stakeholders, I think we need trust. We need trust among ourselves. We need to be trusted by others as well, but also to recognize the importance of networks and what do those networks give us who are part of those networks, that we are not alone. And I think within RPL, as a practitioner, we often might feel alone. I heard that yesterday as well, being spoken by the participants here in Estonia, and they mentioned, I'm sometimes so alone and I doubt and I don't know, am I doing the right thing? And just hearing others saying that, yes, you are doing the right thing, and feeling the relief and getting the assurance, I think this is the value of a network. And I bet there's so much more. And I do want to finish off with this feeling of hope. And I am very, very hopeful that we have those wonderful experiences and examples of already active networks. The examples that show that those networks can grow and continue over years and years. So I hope this inspires people to create networks, join networks, and be part of networks, So I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar and the conference overall, and thank you to the European RPL Network for creating this wonderful opportunity for us to network. So thank you very, very much for everybody, and hope to see you in one of the networks across Europe. Thank you very much.